the people who are hurting the most, the people who are punishing themselves the most, the people who are feeling like it's their fault and their responsibility, and so the only thing they can do is just, bury themselves in the horror of their own mind. Like, these are the deep feelers of the world. You are one of the deep feelers of the world that you got big things to do. You've got a beautiful life to lead. You've got joy that is waiting for you. And when you find that joy, that ripples out of you in directions that you won't even ever know. Welcome to Starfish Hypnosis. I am your host, Liz McKean. In this podcast, we meander through our conscious and subconscious minds, and we do that without a lick of shame. In these episodes, you are going to hear stories. You're going to hear a lot of metaphors because that's how I make sense of the world. We're going to take some big breaths together, and you are going to hear reminder after loving reminder that you are not doing it wrong. Any of this. I'm so glad that you're here. So let's go. Hello and welcome, or welcome back, or both. I'm so glad that you're here. Thanks for hitting play and listening. I am looking forward to this conversation. I don't, as usual, know exactly which direction I'm going to go in. I have several ideas, and I'm a verbal processor, which will come as a shock to no one who has ever met me. And so I'm so grateful for this podcast because it allows me to, talk through ideas in a way that are all incredibly meaningful and on purpose, that the things that I'm saying to you, of course, but provides such flexibility in just the direction that my brain is going to go. And, for the people who I've talked to who have listened to the podcast, your input is really helpful. And that allows me to, adjust. And sometimes those conversations come to me mid-sentence, and I'm able to, just really make this, as strange as it might sound, considering it's just me sitting in my office right now talking to a screen, it really does feel like a conversation to me. And I feel your presence there listening in a non-creepy way. So thank you genuinely for being here and listening and for enjoying this medium as much as I do. Before we get into any more specifics about anything, as per usual, we're going to take some deep breaths. I like to start and end each episode with some breaths. And every once in a while, I'm just giving you a whole big old peek behind the curtain of my brain today, which I guess that's what this whole enterprise is about. I have a moment where I'm like, is this weird? I've never heard another podcast that does breaths in the beginning and end. But then I've gotten really kind feedback about it. And I have to tell you, when I listen back to these podcasts, I breathe with me, and it always makes me feel better. So even if just, one of the times you listen, you take those breaths with me and it allows you to feel a little bit more peaceful in your day, then that makes it worth it. And the beauty of podcasting too is the fast forward and skip button. So you can do that if you want to. So anyways, if you're with me, we're going to take 3 breaths. I'll guide you through it, but you get to breathe however you want to breathe because you are a sovereign being. Let your shoulders relax. Let your jaw unclench. And take a deep breath in through your nose. And a big sigh out. Let something go. Ooh, that felt good. Let's do another one. Big breath in. Make this exhale longer. Really extend this exhale. Nice. One more. This one we're going to hold. Biggest breath you got. Fill up to the very bottom of your belly. And hold. If you're like me, your shoulders went way up while you're holding. See if you can stay holding. Drop the shoulders. Maybe you sip in just a little bit more air. And then open your mouth and let it go. That's the stuff. Thanks for doing that with me. All right, so I have a general direction I want to go with this conversation, and I'm going to start with a story. So I remember when I was first doing yoga regularly, and I lived in Tampa. I did yoga before we moved to Tampa, but not as, I didn't get quite as into it as I did there. And I went to a festival called Wanderlust. I don't think they do them anymore, but it was so cool. It was so cool. There was a big giant stage, and there was a yoga session, like a yoga class that was led by like a celebrity yoga teacher, and there was like a DJ. Then there was a guided meditation by like a celebrity meditation teacher. Oh my gosh, I remember. Oh my God, what was his name? Oh, I'm gonna forget his name, but he wrote a book, and my friend and I brought his book, and he signed it for us, and we just felt so cool. And then there was a run. It was like a 5K run or something. So it was like run, yoga, meditation. It was like a what's it called? Like a triathlon of mindfulness. And it was really cool. And Chelsea, oh my gosh, Chelsea Chorus, who is just one of my favorite, I don't know, humans that doesn't actually know I exist out there, who just taught this incredible yoga class. And again, I was like I wasn't a teacher yet. And gosh, it was during the years that I was still like, sober for a little while and then not. And yoga was just that light, that spark that was growing and growing that eventually turned into what recovery is for me today. But I remember doing that yoga class and her teaching it, and just getting that feeling that I would always get on the yoga mat where my heart just felt like it was going to explode, but in like the best way. I feel like I need a better description for that. But anyways, just like where your just heart feels so full, like you can cry, but also it's joy. And I remember at one point we were doing a pose, and it was a deep stretch. And she was telling us to, like release, like let something go. Like you are holding yourself up. We do as humans. What can you let go of here? And the words she used that I might misquote a little bit, but to my best memory were, what you're carrying doesn't even belong to you, so put it down. And I remember having like tears immediately come to my eyes. I'm in this stretch. And I remember thinking like, what is this? What am I crying about? It was like, it doesn't belong to you, put it down. And she said it a few times, it's like, makes me think of that Good Will Hunting scene where Robin Williams says to Matt Damon, like, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. And he's just like, I know. Shut up. Stop it. And then he's just like hysterically sobbing and hugging him. And it's like something just had to break in like the best way. And that's how I felt in that moment. And it was just like, put it down. Put it down. And I didn't even know. I didn't know what it was. God, I could just cry just thinking about it right now. And I don't think I did put it down that day. Maybe in that moment I put it down. I don't know what it was. I don't know what it is. And I don't think we have to know what it is to put it down. And I'm not saying this as like a universal truth. I know that I know from someone who's done a lot of healing work and therapeutic type of work throughout the years, that getting to the heart of like what happened, like what is the trauma or what is the diagnosis? Like what is the thing that is causing me so much pain is really helpful for my, analytical brain that wants to understand the reason. But that doesn't actually always lead to feeling better. That doesn't always lead to the healing. That sometimes can be the start of it, but it's not all of it. And I find that there are more times that I skip over the let me get to the reason part and just go to the putting it down part that I actually can heal and move on than the opposite way, the opposite direction. And that's fascinating to me because it feels so important to understand. Like we love, especially as somebody who's such a, again, like verbal processor, like I am, like I want words for what is happening. I want language for the thing that I'm feeling. I want a reason for the pain that I'm in. And it feels impossible to consider there could be relief from it without knowing what it comes from. And I think this is just like such an incredibly human thing. I see it when we're all pointing fingers at each other all the time. We're just so desperate to have something be somebody's fault. Like if I can blame you, if it's your fault, then maybe I can move on. And I know for me and for many people that I know, both just personally and people I've worked with, we often feel like I don't know who to blame or the person that I want to blame for this, or the systems or the powers that be are so scary or so impossible to ever consider like resolution from, that I'm just going to blame myself for everything. Because at least if I can find a reason that things are my fault, that my pain is my fault, that my predicament is my fault, then at least that's something that I might have at least a chance of being in control of. But if I think about, the reason I'm in this situation is because of this, systemic XYZ, then that can feel sometimes like a relief, because we certainly deserve to know that like systems are fucked and are the reason that, people are in predicaments that they're in, including us. But it's like we need to make it definite in one or the other. And often I feel like we either are just going to demand that we can point the finger at somebody or point the finger at ourselves. And neither of those really help, And again, I'm not trying to say that there's not value in that, at getting to the root of something. And I am all about accountability. And honestly, like the systemic racism and the systemic just injustice in general that has hurt people, just so many different marginalized groups. And it's just absolutely horrific right now in ways that it has been forever, but feels like it's coming to a head in a way that I think we're all aware of. And we're not going to talk about that right now today. But I think often there is also value in not needing to know exactly what the reason is and still believing that the healing is available to us. And sometimes that looks like acknowledging that something is not my fault, but it's my responsibility. And that's, for me, very empowering, because shame is such a big part of a continuation of really self-sabotaging behavior and paralyzing feelings that will keep me from moving forward ever. When I was struggling with alcohol, the shame of that, absolutely blaming myself for that, was so heavy and overwhelming that the only thing that could make me feel better was more alcohol. And coming to a conclusion that it was my fault was no more or less painful than coming to a conclusion that it was because of some way that my brain was wired, or some trauma that happened to me, or some, whatever, just absolute bullshit cultural, relationship that we have with alcohol. Like all these things were like, okay, all of them and none of them could be true, and none of that matters. All that matters is that it's my responsibility. And it was only when I got to that point alongside it's not my fault, like the shame isn't helping, so I'm just going to let it go. It's not something I can carry, honestly. So whether it belongs to me or not, I have to put it down. But it's my responsibility. And for me, that was empowering. That was like, oh, I get to decide. This is my choice to decide I want to change this. And that has to live in a separate part of me than the whole, like, whose fault is this? Why, how bad am I? Like, what does this mean morally, et cetera? And I think that's the case for more than we have acknowledged, certainly more than I've acknowledged. There was a study with mice that I might get perfectly right, or I might slightly misrepresent, but I know it happened. It's a real scientific study. I probably should have pulled it up before I started talking about this, but essentially they took mice, and as an animal lover, I do not condone this, but they took mice and they would expose them to this smell, a specific smell, just an aroma, nothing harmful there. And when they would expose them to that smell, they would like shock them. They would cause them some discomfort. And so the mice pretty quickly, as most animals and, creatures would, when they would smell the smell, they would react in fear because they knew that that was going to be followed by a shock. And so they did that with a generation of mice. And they found that every following generation, to like the 9th generation of mice. So this mouse, that it was his 9 times back grandparent that had that happen, had the same reaction to the smell that that original mouse did. And that only the first generation had the smell shock happen. Every future generation did not have any actual trauma happen associated with that smell. And by the 9th generation, it's not like they could learn that from the first mouse. You know what I mean? It's not like that mouse would be like, oh, you're going to get shocked if this happened. No. Like that's like in the DNA. So like when that mouse, the first time that little mouse 9 generations down was exposed to that smell, it reacted in fear. Why? There's no reason that makes sense, aside from the fact that like it's just in its DNA. Like we just carry these things. And so if mice carry these things, why in the heck wouldn't we carry these things? And, whenever I've heard about like generational trauma, it's one of those things that I've like believed because it's just one of those things that as a human, you can be like, yeah, I can feel that. I can, that makes sense to me. Like, and we see it in ourselves and in our families and in our others, and also I feel like something about that study made it click a little bit more like, oh shit, this is like in us like for so long. And the thing about that is like, we're likely never going to know where some of these things come from, where some of the things that we're carrying, some of the fears that we have, some of the reactions that we have, some of the behaviors that we have, these triggers, etc. We're just not going to always know where they come from. And it's not our fault. It wasn't even the first mouse's fault. It was some jerk human that shocks these poor mice. But like, it's not our fault, but it's our responsibility, like in the best way of a responsibility being given to you. Like I've said before that choice is just one of my greatest values for myself and for others. And that's how I see that. Like when I don't have to have the job of figuring out why and whose fault it is and who's good and who's bad and what way do I need to, find my penance for this? If my only job is to heal it, and the it is something that I'm not even quite sure what that is yet. That's so freeing. I think about, when we talk about the pause that I've talked about in other episodes where there's these patterns that are happening in our subconscious minds. So like by the time I would go and reach for a drink, it was like I had missed the pause, right? The trigger that happened, I wasn't even aware of. And that trigger was so interlaced, like all mixed in, like spaghetti that's all tied up with each other. Like it was so connected, the trigger and then the solution of drinking, that it's like you couldn't fit a grain of salt between those two things. There was no pause there, and that was not my fault. And that was not something that I was aware of. That was happening in my subconscious. So like when I say pause, I don't mean like, oh, I have a drink in my hand, let me force myself to pause. It's like, no. Like there's a pause that we need to insert way before we've got to that point. And that takes help. That takes support. That takes deciding that it's not my fault, but it's my responsibility. And also part of that responsibility is knowing that I can't always do this by myself. I can't always figure this out. I can't, if the problem isn't happening in this like conscious part of my brain, this conscious part of my brain is probably not going to be able to fix it. The conscious part of my brain can like find help to fix it. My conscious part of my brain can make a decision that I am going to, like start being kinder to myself when I do this thing. And just those little softening of edges are where we can start. But there's so many things that are happening inside of us and under the surface that absolutely impact our everyday life, that absolutely we have a right and a responsibility to do something about because we deserve to enjoy our lives. Absolutely, it's not our fault. And like absolutely doing something about it not only is going to be a game changer for us in this lifetime, but potentially generations to come. Like what a fucking gift. And I just want to clarify too that when I say it's not your fault, it's your responsibility and you have all these choices, etc., I am not saying that in the sense of no accountability, because I mean, in theory, every single thing everybody does could be put into that category. So a person who is hurting others in a really horrific, unforgivable way could be doing it because they have this whole pattern and all this trauma that doesn't belong to them, et cetera, et cetera. But like, they have not taken the responsibility to heal whatever the fuck it is that is creating that pattern. And like, when I was drinking, there are things that I did that sucked. I hurt people, and that sucked. And while the pattern and the way that it was ruining my life was, not my fault, but my responsibility, the shit that I did, even though it was kind of within that realm, like it was my responsibility to stop doing that, to get better so that I could do better. And that's also the reason that I think all of this work is so important. When we talk about healing, it's such a personal thing. Like it's so individual. I mean, God, we're not even talking about just your own body and mind. We're talking about your subconscious. Like that's parts of you that are so personal that you don't even share it with yourself half the time. But the actual process of healing, the outcomes of healing, that is the shit that heals families. That's the stuff that makes communities stronger and better. And I said this before, but the people who are hurting the most, the people who are punishing themselves the most, the people who are feeling like it's their fault and their responsibility, and so the only thing they can do is just, bury themselves in the horror of their own mind. Like, these are the deep feelers of the world. You are one of the deep feelers of the world that you got big things to do. You've got a beautiful life to lead. You've got joy that is waiting for you. And when you find that joy, that ripples out of you in directions that you won't even ever know. I mean, how many times has someone said a kind thing or smiled at you out in the world that you thought about that? You're still thinking about that right now. Maybe it happened years ago. That person maybe didn't even hang around long enough to see you smile back at them. You know what I mean? Like, and that created a ripple for who knows how long. So when I say, it's not your fault, it's your responsibility, I mean, it's your responsibility and a privilege to do for you so that you can find joy in your life, so that you can be well, and for everyone that you come in contact with. Because if we have the deep feelers, well, then this world can be more well. And the healing inside of ourselves, the stopping hurting ourselves has to happen first, because that hole can't pour from an empty cup. Got to put your own mask on first. All those things are real. And taking care of yourself is just such an act of service, And I say that knowing that people that are listening to this are often the ones who are like, but it's so selfish. It's so selfish. Honestly, maybe you've been called selfish. I was called selfish. Like I remember many years and gosh, maybe I wasn't even called selfish. Maybe I just called myself selfish. I was so sure. And so I never took care of myself in a way that I needed to until I unraveled to the point that I had no choice. And I'm so grateful that those crashes happened because it allowed me to get well. And it's my life work and life's joy to help others get well in a way that reduces or eliminates the shame and just helps us to be in a little bit of a softer world. Because there's enough hard, sharp edges. We don't need those happening inside of us. And we got shit to do. And we can't do it when we're suffering, when we've got these patterns going and we're spending so much time trying to make it our fault that we don't ever get around to just finding the love and healing inside of us. And for all of the hard things that are happening in the world, for all of the ways those of us that can have a responsibility to help, to step up, to use these bodies for peace in ways that can be incredibly scary. For me, and I believe for most of us, that can't exist if we don't also get to use these bodies to feel our own joy. You are allowed to enjoy your life. It's your responsibility in the best way. Reclaiming that word responsibility, I think has been sort of weaponized against those of us. I'm thinking there's probably more than one good kid, oldest daughter kind of people in the world, even if you're not that specifically. I'm just thinking, I just know the people that are drawn to the kind of conversations I have. So if that's you, we have taken our responsibilities very, very seriously. So when I tell you it's your responsibility, I say that in a way that I want you to take seriously. I take very seriously. And also, it's like the gift of responsibility, like the autonomy of it all, not this will be on your permanent record. You deserve to enjoy your life. We need you well. Joy is absolutely yours. It's absolutely your birthright. And those things that you're carrying, most of them don't even belong to you. So put them down. And if that feels like visceral for you the way it does for me, but you can't quite place it, like, what is it? What is it? What am I putting down? It feels, I can feel it in my chest, like, what is it? But I want to put it down. It doesn't belong to me. Put it down. Like, please hear me when I say, it's okay if you don't know what it is. You can still put it down. So I'll leave you to chew on that. I'm still chewing on that. Also feeling a little ache in my heart for those poor mice. There's a lot of happy little field mice outside, and then I'm going to focus on their little joyful existence. And we are going to round this out with a few breaths, because that also is our right and our responsibility to take big, beautiful breaths and feel great going into our day. So give yourself a little shake, maybe shake your hands out, maybe let your head rock side to side. Notice if your jaw's clenched, and unclench that shit. And then take a nice deep breath in. And let something go with that exhale. We are putting it down. Another big breath in. Twice as long on this exhale. Extend it. Feel your shoulders melt. Nice. We're going to hold this last one. Biggest breath you have taken all day. Hold it at the top. Maybe smile. Maybe swallow. One more little sip of air. and let it go. You did it. You're amazing. Thanks for hanging with me. I love you. And I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Please be sure that you have hit that subscribe button and send this episode to somebody who you think would enjoy it. You can find me on Instagram at Starfish Hypnosis, same thing on Threads. And of course, if you'd like to work with me, go to my website at lizmckeen.com. A big thank you and hug to my dear friend Mo Houston at Joy Scout Studios, who created the beautiful artwork that is the cover for this podcast. And another big thank you to my editor-producer, Sean Gritters. He is incredible, and if you'd like to work with him, his email will also be linked in the show notes. We will see you next week.